Hi everyone, and welcome once again to this self-knowledge course. Today we'll be studying lecture number 18 called The Inner Chatter and the Psychological Song. We'll be learning what are those, how are they processed, the importance to work on them to stop them from preventing us to advance in our inner work, and how to do it. So let's start by explaining what the inner chatter is. It is urgent to observe the inner chatter and the precise place where it comes from, since this is the cause of many inharmonious and unpleasant psychic states in the present and also in the future. The internal chatter is nothing more than the conversations of our psychological defects that are processed in our mind. Sometimes we believe that we are thinking when we are really listening to everything that our eyes or defects have to say. Our defects give opinions, they argue with each other, they question, they criticize, they plan, and of course, all of this is externalized. Obviously, that vain, unsubstantial, and ambiguous talk, and in general, all harmful, absurd talk manifested in the outside world, has its origin in the wrong inner conversation. The correct state to which we should arrive is inner silence. Emptying the mind or setting it blank in order to really achieve inner silence is not what we are trying to explain now. Practicing the inner silence to which we are referring does not mean preventing something from entering our mind. We are really talking about a very different kind of inner silence. We want to practice inner silence in relation to something that is already in our minds. A person, an event, our own affair, or that of someone else's, what they told us, what so-and-so did, etc., etc. But without touching it with our inner tongue, without intimate speech. Learning to be silent not only with the external tongue, but also, in addition, with the internal tongue. Many are silent outwardly, but with their inner tongue they skin their neighbor alive. The poisonous and evil inner talk produces inner confusion by all those discordant opinions and assumptions of the defects. One says one thing and the other says the opposite, and so on. Let's give an example. Let's say that someone tells us something about a tragic event. Touching it with the inner tongue is all that mental process that occurs when we begin to think about it, to give opinions regarding that subject, to engage in a conversation within ourselves of what happened and how it happened or how it should have happened. Another example is that, for example, we could be walking down the street and see someone similar to a relative. That's where the inner chatter begins. Our defects begin to talk about the resemblance, the similarities, then we go on to remember the experiences with that person, like that time we went to the beach and had a great time. Now the talk arises regarding the desire to go to the beach again, so we start asking who are we going to go with, and that chat goes on and on, talking mentally about everything that comes to our mind. We go from one topic to another non-stop, and we spend the whole day like that. If you observe the wrong inner chatter, you will see that it is made up of half-truth or of truth that relate to each other in a more or less incorrect way, or something that was added or omitted, all in our favor, of course. Unfortunately, our emotional life is based exclusively on the self-sympathy. We only sympathize with ourselves, with our so-loved ego, and we feel antipathy and even hatred towards those who do not sympathize with us. We love ourselves too much. We are 100% narcissistic. This means that we will always, see what we do as good and what others do as bad. We are not able to clearly see our own actions or intentions, or we always have justifications for what we do. In front of ourselves, the guilty or responsible is the other person, always. We can go down the street looking at our cell phone and someone bumps into us. The first thing we do is to become identified with anger and start arguing and claiming that person, that if he's not seeing us on the road, that he needs to pay more attention. Worst of all, after that, our defects continue in our heads talking about the same subject, repeating the same scene or projecting other possible fictitious scenarios about that situation, where perhaps I should have said or done something else or different. We form an argument with that person in our mind, but really it is an argument between two defects of our own psychology. As long as we continue bottled up in self-sympathy, any development of the being becomes more than impossible, since it prevents us from seeing our reality and the point of view of others. We need to learn to see the point of view of others, to avoid making assumptions and committing errors, and have true objectivity. It is urgent to know how to put ourselves in the position of others. Putting yourself in the point of view of others is not trying to feel what they feel, but rather reflecting on the times that we have acted in that way, or in the way that the other person is acting, asking ourselves why, how, under what circumstances we acted that way, and that will make us come to discover that defect or error within us, to understand it and eliminate it, and that allows us to understand why the other person acts the way he acts. That silences criticisms and judgments towards others, and we'll understand we have the same defect and there's nothing to claim or complain about. Another important thing to know is that what really counts in these studies is the way men behave internally and invisibly towards each other. Unfortunately, and although we are very courteous and even sincere at times, there is no doubt that invisibly and internally we treat each other very badly. Apparently, very kind people daily drag their fellow men into their secret cave to do with them whatever they want. Harassment, mockery, ridicule, criticism, slander, even aggression, because we even imagine how we physically assault the other person. Okay, so now let's talk about the psychological song. The psychological song is an internal chatter that is constantly repeated and is based on pain. This is structured through what is called internal consideration. This intimate self-consideration, in addition to hypnotizing consciousness, makes us lose a lot of energy. When we fall into these states of self-consideration in which we believe that we are victims and that our suffering is justified, on one hand, we cannot see or eliminate the defects that are manifesting, and on the other hand, a lot of energy is spent in this process of suffering, energy that will feed the defects. If we don't make the mistake of identifying so much with ourselves, internal self-consideration would be something more than impossible. When we identify with ourselves, we love ourselves too much. We feel sorry for ourselves. We consider ourselves we think that we have always behaved very well with so and so, with our wife, with our husband, with the children, the neighbor, our boss, etc., etc., and that nobody has been able to appreciate it and pay us well. In conclusion, we are saints and all the rest are bad, ungrateful, and inconsiderate. One of the most common forms of intimate self-consideration is also the concern for what others may think about us. Perhaps they assume that we are not honest, sincere, truthful, brave, etc. The most curious thing about all this is that we are lamentably unaware of the enormous loss of energy that this kind of concern brings us. Many hostile attitudes towards certain people who have done us no harm are due precisely to such concerns born of the self-consideration. In these circumstances, loving oneself so much, considering oneself in this way, it is clear that the I, or rather we should say the I's, instead of becoming extinct, are then terribly horrified because they are being fed with our energy. When we become identified with oneself, we take great pity on our own situation and even take it upon ourselves to do the math. Because, yes, we have an account book in which we write down all the good things we have done and to whom, and how bad we have been paid, and also what is the final balance, and what the other people owe us and how we are going to charge them. This is how we think that so-and-so, our husband, our friend, family, boss, children, etc., etc., have not paid us properly despite all our well-known goodness. And bottled up in this, we become unbearable and voting for everyone. You can hardly talk to a person like that because any conversation is certain to end up in that little account book and his most bounded sufferings. We need to understand that the psychic growth is only possible through forgiving others. If someone lives from moment to moment suffering for what they are owed, for what they did to them, for the bitterness they caused them, always with the same song, nothing can grow inside them. The Lord's Prayer says, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." The feeling that someone owes something to us stops all interior progress of the soul. Jesus, the great Kabir, said, "Agree quickly with your adversary while you are with him on the road, lest the adversary hand you over the judge, and the judge to the bailiff, and you be thrown out in jail. Truly, I tell you, you will not live until you pay the last penny." If they owe us, we owe. If we demand to be paid up to the last denarius, we must first pay up the last quadrant. If we claim for justice, justice is going to be applied to us. This is the law of retaliation, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. A vicious circle and absurd, of course. The apologies, the fulfilled satisfaction and humiliation that we demand from others for the bad things that they cause us are also demanded from us, even though we consider ourselves as tamed sheep. Placing oneself under unnecessary laws is absurd. It is better to put oneself under new influences. The law of mercy, for example, is a higher influence than the law of the violent man. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It is urgent to intelligently place ourselves under superior influences and forget that they owe us and eliminate in our psyche any form of self-consideration. We most never admit within ourselves feelings of revenge, resentment, negative emotions, anxieties for the evils that have been caused to us, violence, envy, incessant remembrance of debts, etc., etc. If we observe people, we can directly demonstrate that each person has their own song. Each one sings his own psychological song. I want to refer emphatically to the question of psychological accounts, okay? Feeling that they are was, complaining, self-consideration, etc. Sometimes people sing their song because they feel like doing it without being asked, without being encouraged, and on the other occasions, after a few glasses of wine, they start talking about all their disgraces and how bad people and life have treated them. That boring song must be removed. This incapacitates us internally and robs us of a lot of energy. In matters of revolutionary psychology, a person like this certainly cannot go beyond himself because he stays in the past. A person hampered by sad songs cannot change his level of being. He cannot go beyond what he is. In order to pass to a higher level of the being, it is necessary to stop being what we are at this moment. We need not to be what we are. How could we do that if we hang on these emotions and feelings? If we continue to be what we are, we will never be able to pass to a higher level of the being. Very often, a random person makes friends with another just because it is easy for him to sing his song. He seeks to surround himself with people willing to listen to him. Unfortunately, such relationships end when the singer is asked to shut up, to change the record, to talk about something else, etc. So the resentful singer goes in search of a new friend, someone who is willing to listen to him indefinitely. He demands understanding, someone who sympathizes with him, as if it were so easy to understand another person. To understand another person, you must first understand yourself. Unfortunately, the good singer believes that he understands himself and wants others to understand and support him as well. There are many disappointed singers who sing the song of not being understood and dream of a wonderful world where they are the central figures and have all the attention of the public. However, not all singers are public singers, which are those who tell their problems to everyone. There are also reserved singers. They don't sing their song directly, they sing it more secretly. They are people who have worked a lot, who have suffered too much. They feel disappointed. They think that life owes them everything they were never able to achieve. They commonly feel an interior sadness, a sensation of monotony and terrible boredom, an intimate fatigue or frustration around which thoughts pile up, and this generates deep states of sadness, hatred, resentment, pessimism, and depression that can lead them even to suicide. Unfortunately, such secret inner songs go unnoticed by ourselves unless we intentionally observe them. Obviously, self-observation allows light to penetrate into oneself. No interior change could occur in our psyche unless it is brought to light by the self-observation. It is essential to observe ourselves when we are alone, in the same way as when we are with other people. When we are alone, for example, very different eyes or defects, thoughts and emotions are manifested, okay? We are not always in good company when we are alone. It is hardly natural or normal to be Well, it is natural to be in a very bad company when we are alone. The most negative and dangerous defects appear specifically when we are alone. If we want to radically transform ourselves, we need to sacrifice our own suffering. And as incredible as it may seem, this is the most difficult thing to do. A person could decide to sacrifice their pleasures, but people hang on their sufferings because they believe they have a right to it for the damage they have suffered. And this is the most difficult thing for us to detach ourselves from. But just as we must eliminate those internal and external psychological songs and not go around there singing them to others, it is good to know what to do when a person approaches and wants to sing us his song and tells us all his problems, misfortunes, and sufferings. In those moments, we must use psychological depth to not become identified with what that person is saying, and not to fall into states of grief, condescension, and pity, because this causes us to lose energy and fall into very negative states, which have nothing to do with the true compassion that we must develop for others. So, this been today's conference. Hope you join us next week in conference 19 called States and Events. We'll be learning how to maintain a correct psychological state at any event or circumstance in our lives. So, see you soon. If you have any comment or question, remember you can leave it in the comment section. So, bye-bye.